We are live for the first time. Prophecy Prepper is doing a live stream. Already see a couple of thumbs up and one big question waiting for me already. Great stuff, everyone. Okay, with just 20 seconds into it, I see a few people are waiting. We'll give them a couple of minutes to see who else will join. And if you're joining after the live stream and watching the video playback, thank you very much for tuning in. Can I first start asking with everyone who's already here, where are you from? And oh yeah, and can you hear me? That's the big question. If you can hear me, just let me know, and then I know I can crack on. And please tell me where you're from. I've got some notes up here on my other screen, and I'm hoping for that to take me through a little bit. But after that, it's a free-for-all with a few things I have. You'll see the watermark up here. I'm trialing out this live stream with Ecamm Live to see how it goes. I'm also using my new Stream Deck to punch some buttons and try to work that all in the Mac. It's been a whole day's worth of shift in learning it. But anyway, that's enough. So let's just see, make sure everyone can hear us. So what have we got in the comments so far? Deacon David, sending blessings to you, Mark, from Ireland on this St. Patrick's Day. Yes, that just reminds me, Deacon David. I forgot to get a little leprechaun overlay up here on the live stream. Buena Festa, happy St. Patrick's Day to you and to all. Hope you're all having a great day. Oh, East Lothian. Hello, Kerr, up in East Lothian. Scotsman, good stuff. And we have East of England as well. Excellent. So you're obviously hearing me well enough then if you're answering the question. Now, the first question, of course, I haven't forgot about you, Mega Matt 53. When will the Pope go to Moscow? Well, that is the question, isn't it? If you've watched the recent video, I did an interview with Glenn Hudson over a week ago. It's doing very well. He covers that, the fact that Pope Francis has been trying to get to Moscow, or to Russia anyway, since 2017, which we know is the centenary of Fatima, the 100th anniversary of the apparitions there. More likely, with the way things are going with Russia just now against Ukraine and everything else, that isn't ending anytime soon, I don't believe. And people are just sensing, not just with that, but with everything in the world and the church. It's a key indicator to wait for, because that indicator, along with the other couple of facts mentioned in that interview, is the one last thing left, really, because everything else is in place now that wasn't in place 10, 20 plus years ago. So that's why it's important to look at it for now. So hopefully that helps answer it a little. I would say if you haven't watched it yet, watch the interview with Glenn Hudson. I've also got plenty of videos and apparitions in a playlist, which I keep saying in videos for people to watch in chronological order. There's a reason why I've done them. And looking back, the first one of that playlist is Fatima. But inside that video, I actually go back further before speaking of Fatima in depth. And I cover the vision of Pope Leo XIII in 1884. That's where we get the St. Michael prayer, due to his mystical experience. But if you go further back a few hundred years, you get Our Lady's apparition in Quito, Ecuador, speaking about these times, specifically after the mid-20th century onwards, Freemasonic sects, focusing a lot on the children, etc., etc. And that's exactly what I'm going to be touching on a little bit in this live stream video tonight. So with that being said then, I'll obviously keep coming back to some of the comments, see if there's anything new here. I see there's a few others joining. Seattle. Wow, across the pond, absolutely amazing. Foxbell, thank you for joining, and for everyone else, this is great. It's quite unusual for the fact that this is happening live stream in my humble abode here. As you can, I don't know how much of you've seen of my recent videos. I've just relaunched in January, and back in October I get married to a wonderful woman, and we have settled down here in her homeland in let's just say it's Middle England. For all I do YouTube and that, I try to keep some sort of privacy going on. I'm in one of the rooms that's become office slash vlog room, a little bit of a library here. I've got the drums, there's a piano which she plays, I'm the drummer obviously, and I just thought I'd get a little bit of light rather than the constant background of books and things. So what do you think of it? I mean, I could colour it different colours and all that, but I'm going to crack on with this video. Susie Rachel Smith, yeah, Susie, you're here, good stuff. Another Scots. Hope you're having a good day. Good to see you on. Right, with introductions done and a little chat, we're going to go into what the title of this video was all about. And it's the reason I relaunched back in January, late January. I find my life is more in focus now than ever, especially after those hard years after leaving seminary. But since getting married, since embracing the vacation, since being part of a lay community through my wife, everything's focusing back in faith again. But before getting into all that, I want to remind people that Prophecy Prepper, the prepping's there for a reason, and I've been back and forth about changing the name, but that's why I've changed the channel art from all the other photos to what it is now, preparing for the triumph. Because everything that's happening in this world, everything that's happening in Britain, America, Ukraine, Europe, you name it, China, Taiwan, everything happening, you could actually find many sources going back to prophecies. And I'm speaking specifically of Catholic Church prophecies, ones that have been accepted for a long time, ones that have not been denied but are still in that forget the name of it in Latin, but it's basically, it's not denied but it's not accepted. It's the case they're just being prudent with it. So I'm not talking Nostradamus, I'm not talking Mayan calendar and all these things that the media will always try and hype into sensationalist nonsense. Half of these books behind me here came from the university in Rome when I was studying at BS Seminary. I've got everything from Aristotle's Ethics and St Thomas Aquinas's commentary on his metaphysics, all the way down to bushcraft books and everything else. There's a whole load of encyclicals. There's a whole load of different books, such as the one I was on about last week, After the Warrant to 2038. There's Medjugorje books, Fatima books, you name it. And that's just one area. We've got more downstairs, plenty of stuff. And of course, the studies themselves always keep you in a good way in mind of the church and that. But with all that being said, the reason I'm bringing this one up is because when I'm speaking with people in the church, they'll just focus on the grace, focus on God, focus on the good things. And they're absolutely right. But on the other side, it's like, well, you have to make sense of what's going on in the world so we know what to pray for, we know what to pray against, we know how to be prepared for what's coming. Because if you ever had to think of the best word and what all this is pointing to is preparation. So that's why I think the Prophecy Prepper for now suffices with the name. And there's a lot of prepping channels out there, and I go back and forth between them because they're focusing on all the world. And see, when you do focus on everything, and again, I'm covering a little bit here tonight, we're talking about the digital ID structure coming through, we're talking about World Economic Forum, we're talking about the 15-minute cities, these smart cities. I've even seen Aldi and Tesco for months have been trialling out staffless supermarkets, all artificial intelligence. That is the big puppet master of all these things combined. And yes, I'm going to touch on it. Now, before digressing, I do have a list of things that I want to go through to bring you that. There's a few videos here as well covering things that's come out of this January's World Economic Forum. It's a good 5 to 7 minutes long, and if you bear with it, you'll start understanding a bit more of why this is all progressing very, very fast towards basically where the plug's going to get pulled. Then people will be saying, what's happened, what's going on? Garabandal, Fatima, Medjugorje, Akita, hello. So yeah, without further ado, let's do it. And like I say, guys, if you can give me the thumbs up, if you hit the like button, feel free to share the link. It only takes a matter of seconds to share it to a few people, if not a list in WhatsApp or something. That would be great. Get me out of YouTube jail with this algorithm, as I've been off for a while. But here we go. So yeah, just a little bit what's coming up in the channel as well. I actually have 3 interviews already recorded and waiting to be published. I've had further interviews with Carol Kelso. Being Catholic Media, an Irish lady in Scotland speaking all about her stuff. That's coming. I had a great interview, something very exciting as I've just remembered. I had an interview with a one-on-one with Anne Vucic, who was personal interpreter to the Medjugorje visionaries, especially Ivan over the years when he spent half his time in America with his American wife and family. She's also she has also been for many years the interpreter for Father Slatko Sudats. It's Sudak when you look at it, Sudac, but she has told me it's Sudats with the Croatian pronunciation. He is the stigmatist priest who's taken some quiet time. I suppose I should keep the privacy of it. But there's many videos on YouTube of him speaking. He was the priest that has the stigmata and many similar gifts given to him that we saw with Padre Pio. So I've had a full hour and a half talk about Medjugorje, setting a few things straight with the timelines, with the priest of Mariana's choosing, with the church and all the commission that happened there and where things actually are, plus much more, and a few stories with Father Sudats. So that's coming up. And the third video interview I already have done is with Anne again and also Holly Carney. Now, Holly is a producer over in California and she's very much working along the big studios and A-list Hollywood producers such as Lucas Foster. Now, he's done some videos with Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Angelina and Brad, Denzel Washington, Man and Fire, and one of the recent ones, Ford versus Ferrari, I believe it's called. So there's many, many movies with him done. And why am I saying this? Because Holly was the producer of the movie Fatima in 2020. If you haven't seen it yet, check it out. Now, Holly has asked her friend Anne Vucic to come on board as an executive producer in a new project called Between the Mountains. It is going to be a Hollywood A-list movie about Medjugorje. I cannot believe it. And just after launching into YouTube again just several weeks ago, I'm getting all these interviews with these people. I've had Glenn Hudson finally. I've got other people chatting to me all the time. Some other YouTube channels as well, and I'm just going for it. I think the timidity and uncertainty in the last few years was always there, but not now. This is it, and the reason that's the reason why I've joined back on YouTube, because there is so much stuff happening. So remember to check out Between the Mountains movie. That's the name of the YouTube channel, and you'll see my very short testimony on it. But they've asked me also to be an ambassador for the movie, whatever that's going to entail of promoting it and getting it out there. And I have emailed a few people. Now, the movie's not going to be about the apparitions, the visionaries and all this. It's going to be about the fruits. So that's the hundreds of priests that are finding their vacations from there. It's also going to be, as I've mentioned to them in Scotland, Mary's Meals and Craig Lodge and things. But if any of you have had great experience of Medjugorje, or know others that have, get in touch and let us know, either in the comments below or my email address of the YouTube is on the About section on the YouTube page, and this is where we're going to promote it. So all those videos are coming up. It's keeping in line with the faith. It's keeping in line in terms of where we are with apparitions and prophecies, and keeping a fine balance. It's all about the balance. And like I was saying, there are a couple of channels I've been tuning back into that I haven't done for some time, some of the prepping channels, because they really are focusing on a lot to do with these 15-minute cities and digital IDs and World Economic Forums. And my job, I won't say what it is or who I work for, but it's a big company. I'm in at least half a dozen houses a day fixing people's internet and the Wi-Fi and all that stuff, connectivity issues. And you get chatting with everyone from every culture, every walk of life, every creed, and they can all sense there's something brewing. You can just sense it. And again, when you're on the ground and you're speaking with people from all backgrounds, like I was saying, it makes you wonder, what is it they're also sensing? Because I know where I'm coming from. Where are they coming from? And I've had a good conversations about it without going too far. Just tell them to watch the channel. Yeah, so I've put a couple of things together. I'm a complete novice when it comes to the smart cities in terms of how it's rolling out. As far as I'm remembering, it's something like 36 cities globally that are trialling out this 15-minute structure of where you can't go any further than 15 minutes for all your needs because of climate change and the carbon footprint and all this, which is going to be an absolute control. It's like Demolition Man meets the Hunger Games and all the other futuristic movies Hollywood's put together. So we're kind of seeing it as becoming more like a reality now. So I'm going to, with that being said, again, we've got the banking system, Silicon Valley just went there. Apparently, second banks went. There's a lot of chatter. I'm noticing that where they think more and more's coming, and it's going to be worse than the 2008 recession. But yeah, crypto seems to be doing very well. Coincidentally, I did a video a few weeks ago where we have our Prime Minister speaking about digital banking, backed up currencies and things. So I'm going to touch on all of that. Then I'm going to start looking at this why the bigger picture, which these prepper channels seem to miss out on. They just focus on this and get your food ready and get ready to head for the hills. Whereas I say, yeah, Jesus told us to head for the hills, but he sent his mother all this time to tell us what's coming and how best to prepare more than just for your sustainability and what the world. But without further ado then, before I keep chatting on, let's just have a few more look at the comments and then I'm going to play this video within the next 60 seconds, hopefully. Oh, Brendan Quinn from Australia. G'day, mate. Great to have you here. Yeah, I'll check out that book as well, Brendan. Thank you. Brian O'Neill, you're just speaking my language there. I'd like to point people to... Oh, I wonder if I can get these starred up. Can it come up on the screen? I don't know if I need to work on that for the next time. I'd like to point people towards getting their money out of banks and into gold. I've invested in gold sovereigns so they've got a set value and can be traded for goods and services. I did a video a few years back now, maybe even during the pandemic, where the artificial intelligence graph was the puppet master over the smaller ones, including blockchain technology, genome sequencing, AI, robotics, and all this. And the one thing people back then were saying to get into was the gold. And if you look at the gold 3 years ago to the gold now and where things are going, it is a good point to get to. But there's still a mystery going around what's happening with this digital currency, especially when we're getting our world leaders talking about it. And with that being said, let's go and watch this. Let's watch this video then. Like I say, there's a good bit on it. I've taken it from the Creative Commons and YouTube's, put a bit together, and the bits that stand out for me. So please bear with it, and we'll comment on it afterwards.
Right over there behind me is the future site of Sidewalk Toronto. It's the proposals modular housing and office buildings will study occupants' behavior while they're inside them to make life easier. According to the proposal, residents and workers will be universally connected by powerful broadband and served by futuristic conveniences.
A smart city can't be understood or discussed without reaching back and talking about surveillance capitalism. A smart city isn't just a city that has technology in it. It's a city with a certain kind of ideological framework that uses technology to reach its end goals. A smart city is usually understood as an urban environment that uses ubiquitous sensing technology and data analytics to understand phenomenon within city spaces. On the data end of things, smart cities claim to be collecting more data, which they are, and claim to be using that collection and analysis to better respond to urban issues, from environmental degradation to transportation planning and the like.
We can analyze 4 different features of the smart city. The first is to increase and integrate surveillance of many different kinds. Second, to create a superficial sense of participation among the inhabitants of a city, to encourage economic growth at 2 different levels. Localized gentrification and impelling this new economy that is taking shape. The final function of the smart city is to create a superficial arena in which people can passively support ecological or environmental proposals while also denying them the opportunity to develop a global consciousness of the environment and of environmental problems.
So smart cities are different and not so different from cities that exist in capitalism. But I think that the difference would be the use of technology to further surveil the public and to use that data to intervene in ways that can increasingly control and manage the population that suits the interests of a political economy of capitalism.
On the strategic outlook for responsible consumption, and responsible consumption that meets both growing and changing sort of consumer needs and expectations in a way that is first more environmentally responsible, secondly is healthier for people, and thirdly is more inclusive and equitable and transparent. First of all, there's the challenge to fundamentally transform a number of our current consumption models and patterns over the medium to longer term to be more sustainable, healthy, and inclusive.
Inclusive
and then
again.
obviously there's the current challenge of recognizing that consumers are dealing with pretty severe shocks and crises. And having to manage both of those at the same time, I think, is at the heart of the responsible consumption challenge. If we look at that first part of the challenge, I think it's clear probably to all of us in the room that our current models of both production and consumption, whether it's for food, personal care products, consumer durables, textiles, pretty much any sort of consumer products and services, are just not sustainable enough and are not going to be able to support expected global population of over 8 billion people by 2030 and a sort of a 50% increase, expected 50% increase in consumer spending by then. There are numerous statistics we could quote, but if we just take food, the UN Food System Scientific Group have estimated that the hidden costs of food production and consumption as they currently are to both human health and the planet total about $19 trillion, which is almost double the value of food consumption. Water insecurity, some 40% of the world's population are currently facing water insecurity. And then obviously equally, there's the current crisis that we're dealing with. And doesn't need sort of too much elaboration, but I think worth noting how yesterday that the sort of the forecast coming from the World Economic Forum's chief economists or community of chief economists, and I quote, declining wages and high or very high inflation in most parts of the world in the near future, while at the same time the planet may suffer the worst food crisis in recent history and is already in there.
We're developing, through technology, an ability for consumers to measure their own carbon footprint. What does that mean? That's where are they traveling? How are they traveling? What are they eating? What are they consuming on the platform? So individual carbon footprint tracker. Stay tuned. We don't have it operational yet, but this is something that we're working on.
I'm proud to say that under the UK's presidency, the group of the world's 7 most advanced economies, the G7, is launching a set of public policy principles for retail central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Central bank digital currencies could be a digital version of money, a bit like a digital banknote that could be used alongside physical notes and coins. Unlike most of the digital money people use daily today, it would be issued directly by a central bank, like the Bank of England in the UK. And governments and central banks across the world are working together, looking into what having a digital currency might mean in practice. This includes issues that people care about, such as ensuring users' money would be safe and secure, that it could work with other ways to pay, would be energy efficient and available to everyone. A potential CBDC could offer businesses and consumers new ways to pay in the future. It's all part of the wider story of digital innovation that has delivered benefits to millions around the world and in the UK. The decision on whether to launch a central bank digital currency is for each country to make, and no G7 jurisdiction has yet made that choice. These decisions raise important questions about the reshaping of our economy, financial systems, and the way in which people interact with money and payments. That's why working together and careful evaluation with our international partners is essential. In the UK, earlier this year, I announced a new joint task force between the Treasury and the Bank of England to look into a potential CBDC as a complement to cash and bank deposits. We're also hearing from firms, technology experts and others. Under the leadership of the UK, This report today will help support and inform exploration of CBDCs in the G7 and beyond.
And I also think this issue to do with the technology and the digital infrastructure, I just want to emphasize how important I think that is. Because in the end, you need the data. You need to know who's been vaccinated and who hasn't been. Some of the vaccines that will come on down the line will be multiple, there'll be multiple shots. So you've got to have, for reasons to do with the healthcare more generally, but certainly for a pandemic or for vaccines, you've got to have a proper digital infrastructure. That's what we need to do. But if you want the politicians to focus on a plan, I promise you, it's got to be because they think in the next few years, not in the broad future, it's going to matter to them to have that plan.
Well, quite a lot to digest there, isn't there? I wanted to get a good bit up to make an impact because this is me first entering it in now to the channel. And this is a video where you're going to see everything from Rishi Sunak and Tony Blair right through to Marine Apparitions and Prophecies. That lady was worth listening to again because even after hearing her for a second or third time, they're already looking at 2030 as when was the Great Reset year, and she's already speaking right now about one of the worst food shortage crises that the world's ever seen in this modern day and age. And that ain't all to do with the proxy war right now, not a chance. These things are coming out long before then, and it's not to do with what happened a couple of years ago either, with you know what. You need to watch what you say on here these days. The commies are listening. But the other thing is data. It's all data, data, data. The world's choices, the top elites, the banks, the billionaire hedge fund companies and all other billion-dollar companies, it's all data. Now, a few years ago, I went for an experience insight day in Scotland to a big company. It was Sky at Watermark in Livingston. Didn't join it or anything like that. I was just there looking into it from the computing background side of things. And they took us through a tour. They showed us the cybersecurity teams, which is an up-and-coming thing with artificial intelligence worlds and all this. But they says, then over here is the team that told Sky directors not to bid for the Champions League football. And this was a few years ago. It went to BT Sport. So we're talking 4 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And they says they took all the data. It was all to do with the data and why it saved Sky billions and billions of money. Knew it was going to cost them customers. I knew it was going to cost them everything else, but BT Sport just went astronomical and outbidded any other competitor for the Champions League. And what the point was, he says BT Sport ended up putting it on YouTube. They did not have the platform with all the customers to go over. So all the data is evidence given to make that multi-billion-pound decision to tell Sky not to buy the Champions League at such a price. They didn't, and that's why it worked out better for them the year later when they got it back, because BT couldn't handle it. So that's all based on data. That's just an example of the one I know myself. But you're hearing it from Tony Blair, you're hearing it from other people. It's all data. Everything we've been doing the last 20 plus years or so, Facebook, Twitters, Insta, everything we like, where we've checked in, what we don't. Artificial intelligence knows us better than we know ourselves. Yeah, we'll have our mindset, we'll have our reactions, but we have our habits, we have our unconscious habits and biasness and everything else. And all that we've done through giving it through the digital stuff, that's basically what they're collecting. And they're using so much to work things out. And that's what brings into these 15-minute cities. That's what's bringing into basically being in more a controlled society. Now, with this controlled society, and already we're herded by these where wallets are buying things, and the fact that we can do it with the cards and all that as well now. It's herding us along. And also our houses now with your Alexas and smart connectivities, it's herding us towards, and I'm in this industry, it's herding us towards the fact that we don't need to go out our houses for anything. Our shopping can be delivered when we order it. I've seen some people in their houses, they have their fridge with a camera. It tells them when things are going off and they can order it from the fridge door. It's all here. So 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, you're probably going to see new build houses actually just being smart tech, everything there. And do you think 2019, 2020, you know, when we were in our houses quite a lot, it was quite, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the reality and the devastation that came with that time frame, but it was a dress rehearsal for all this stuff as well. There's no denying that. Absolutely no denying that. Now, I want to kind of crack on here before we're kind of getting to the point where it's going to be a bit of free for all now, although I've got some slides I want to get up there. But what's all this pointing to? And I've said it in a few videos before. It's pointing to global communism. And I know I had someone before saying, how can it be communism? Well, one, I've got Karl Marx's Manifesto Communist book there, which I studied over in Rome years ago. Haven't opened it since. But I did pick up on a few things today just to kind of cover, and that's where I'll probably skip down to it, where I get it up here. These were the 6 ideas coming from Marxism when it came to communism. Capitalist society is divided in 2 classes. Now, do you not see since the pandemic that's been kind of all the more where it's your middle class jobs and small owned businesses that are all getting put out the game? Look at the fact that we're talking about further increase to our bills for power and electric and gas and everything else, and it's to go up again in a few weeks come April. You're seeing it's the haves and the have-nots, which is the next point below. I can't even remember how to pronounce that name. Bourgeoisie. Well, the haves and the have-nots, we're the proletariat, the workers. So those with the economic powers, your elites, the 1%ers, they're going to control other social institutions. And then we're getting ideological control. What can that ideological control be, I wonder? The ideological control, I'm going to get my face up here. Let's see if this works live. I'm too scared to touch these buttons. I don't think it's happening. Anyway, ideological control. I think a lot of this is to do with the fact that the PC culture and your climate change pushing this stuff in is all part of it as well. And then everyone's just going along saying the same thing. You ever notice people just repeat things like they're robots? And then it's this false consciousness all about it. But when things are going to be at their worst, as we hear back from ones in the Sea of Fatima and things like that, things coming back at their worst, we're talking there of global communism again, because Garibin Dal speaks about when communism returns. And I looked for ages today to find Lucia Fatima's later interview one, where I'm sure it was her, she was asked when she says that communism would engulf every nation on earth. And the interviewer said, you mean every nation would be under communism? She said yes. And so she knew more, obviously, what was coming, and whether the church has the extra letter or not, as people speak about with what she gave as an explanation to that vision of Fatima. But global communism, now people for years were on about, oh, is that the Chinese will take over the world, and now we see Russia on by. Russia ain't fighting back right now because they want to spread communism. They made that mistake back in the Soviet days, and that was what Our Lady told them. Told us all. She said, if you don't consecrate Russia, she'll spread her errors. The errors were Marxist communism. And then we see how communism is now, decades later, in places like North Korea and China. That isn't the case in Russia. In fact, when you look at those errors from back then that spread throughout the world, the Western world is more communistic than Russia, I would say. Without knowing, I don't know a great deal of the politics of Russia itself, not making out Putin's a saint or anything at all, but the fact that the Western agitators have just been making this come about for years, and now he's finally caved in when he knows he has to. And it's terrible to see the war side of it, but I mean, they made better use of the cameras in Ukraine war than they ever did in Afghanistan or Iraq. But again, that's the false conscience of keeping the people along in the Western ideologies of things. Now, the crypto isn't something new, but the thing with Bitcoin and that, although they're doing great since these banks crashed, believe it or not, is as Rishi Sunak says, it's going to be a digitalised currency that's backed by the Bank of England. And the reason the UK is the presidency over this, with the G7 states at least, which probably means there'll be presidency over any others more often as it grows further into the G20. Why is the UK presidency of it? I highlighted it in the book review I did a week ago in this book, After the Warning to 2038. The author highlights the fact that although Britain is small by comparison when it comes to military, we've lost that empire of military might, but through the laws of money, it's still the Bank of England, with all your dynasties of certain families that still own the gold, and it's the Bank of England that sets the price of gold all the time. So their power is in the wealth of the banks, and that's why I believe Rishi Sunak, speaking of why they're leading the way as a nation with the G7. So this is all coming about for a long, long time, that we are going digital currency, we are going digital everything, and the whole earth is going to be artificially ran. Your 15-minute cities is like your Hunger Game districts, and then it comes to it just comes to the point, well, some are even saying maybe it's this artificial intelligent world, this control, this communistic ways, that is the fact that's going to give rise to the Antichrist and things like that. I don't know about that or where he's coming through there, the man of perdition, or where we are, but you can certainly see the fact that we're in a time now that God's going to pull the plug. Now, one guy I really love listening to right now, and I'm going to do another video on him and my own take on it, is Father Chad Ripperger. He's doing a lot of YouTube videos right now. He's very popular. He's an academic, psychologist, demonologist, exorcist, Thomas Aquinas all the way with his philosophy and everything. He's got at least one doctorate in philosophy that I know of, and at least 15 years experience with the extreme cases. Now, he even says, based on certain things happening in society, that the demons know their time's up, because they know from history that when certain things came into place, such as the attacks on marriage, the nuclear family, the Christian doctrine teaching of what it is for marriage and family, they know from history that God's going to pull the plug soon. And it's this parallel that's running with the theme of all the videos I'm doing regarding marrying apparitions and prophecies of the church. Now, what ones in particular am I talking about here? Here we go. It all started from Fatima for our times, but if you go back further to Quito, you go back looking into Our Lady of Nog. La Salette, I'm very much aware of La Salette, have been for years, I just haven't done a video on it yet. But of course, Garabandal, Akita, Medjugorje, and Catherine Emmerich, I'm all over them. St. Pio, I know very well. And going from Quito, I want to just bring up a couple of other parts here, because this is where I'm feeding into for these times now. The prophecy of St. Nilus, around about 400 AD, long, long time ago. At that time, people's appearances will change, and it will be impossible to distinguish men from women during their shamelessness in dress and style of hair. These people will be cruel and will be like wild animals because of the temptations of the Antichrist. So there he is, pointing out that the times where you can't tell a man from a woman is coming around about the same time of the Antichrist, the spirit of him at least. There will be no respect for parents and elders. How are you finding that, parents? Let me know in the comments. Love will disappear, and Christian pastors, bishops and priests will become vain men, completely failing to distinguish the right-hand way from the left. Does that not remind you of Akita, 1973? At that time, the morals and traditions of Christians and of the church will change. People will abandon modesty, and dissipation will reign. Falsehood and greed will attain great proportions, and woe to those who pile up treasures. Lust, adultery, homosexuality, secret deeds, and murder will rule in society. Hello? At that future time, remember this is in the 400s, at that future time, due to the power of such great crimes and licentiousness, people will be deprived of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Then the all-good God will see the downfall of the human race and will shorten the days for the sake of those few who are being saved. Now I'm going to follow on with Quito, Ecuador, because it's very similar with that one. But this saint back in the 400s, I mean, look at the parts underlined there. You're echoing the same things that's getting repeated throughout the centuries. And I ain't on here to make judgments of people and their lifestyle and all the rest of it. I know where I stand, I know my opinion, I know my faith, but I still treat everyone with human dignity at the end of the day. But when it comes to certain things I'm going to show you right now, things that's happening in Scotland and that's happening in America and throughout, there's a reason why we need to not be timid when it comes to defending our faith, when it comes to defending our children and their upbringing, their formation, because at the end of the day, regardless if you're piling up the treasures like the elites, whether you're in the working class like us and where we're going to fit in this communistic world that's ever increasing, we're still going to need to face a day of judgment, aren't we? Now, if we could only let these videos maybe one time serve testimony to the absolute irrationality of what's going on in our time, because it's coming to a point, as he says there, that God will take away the Holy Spirit. Now, if you hear Father Ripperger speaking about the time where God's just going to take it, if God took himself away from us and took away every divine grace that keeps us in suspension of life, we would just be like the demons constantly in every way, shape and form, every action, every word, every deed. It would just be absolute mayhem and pandemonia, as the name would suggest. So yeah, here's that saint picking it up again himself. Now if we get into the Quito message here, picking up from that, she told, I had all the details, it's on my first video with Fatima, and the playlist of Marian Apparitions. You'll see it in further deeper details. But she says back then, a few hundred years ago, that shortly into the 19th and beyond the middle of the 20th century, so we have a focus of the timeline going back around about the swinging 60s. And yeah, what happened back then? Passions would erupt and total corruption of customs, the morals. Satan will reign through the Masonic sects. This was 100 years before the Masonry even get invented. They will focus principally on the children in order to sustain this general corruption. Hello? Sacrament of matrimony will be attacked and deeply profaned. Holy orders will be ridiculed, oppressed and despised. Now there's a lot in there that, again, if you're aware of, a lot of the apparitions and stuff, you're going to know that this is echoing a lot of stuff again. Let me get back to me here. So the Masonic sects, these are the ones that people are even speaking about, the fact that Freemasonry, you know, the secret handshakes, getting in, work your way up the ladder and all that, and get to the places of authority, places of wealth and power. And yeah, you can see even Father Ripperger keeps going on about the Masonic sects. I was watching an Instagram reel yesterday, even Jeremy Clarkson with the farm. I haven't watched it yet, but he's living my dream. Just getting away from it all. But he basically says even farmers and all this, when it comes to the food and all that, you can't get planning permission for nothing. You can't get anything done to grow more food, do anything, the lot. You can't get anything. He says, well, maybe I'll just need to put on what do you call the dress thing that the Masons wear, and maybe I'll get something then. That's what he actually said. I was like, hello. See, not everyone's kind of aware of it. But I think what secret societies were, or Masonry and all the rest of it, whatever. But now it seems to be coming more to the forefront with people who are actually talking all about that stuff. Because what's in place, how can Tony Blair, Keir Starmer and everyone else over the years, and especially in January, go to the World Economic Forum speaking about digital IDs, speaking about the food shortages, speaking about carbon footprints, trackers and all this stuff. And then now in March we're already seeing 36 cities worldwide trialling it for the data collection. So yeah, people are concerned, and rightly so. But a lot of people don't understand why or what is going to come of it. Watching this channel, you will know, and that's the whole point of it. Now, in that note, before I forget again, I meant to say earlier, I was in someone's house just yesterday installing some cabling and things like that, setting them up. And noticed the books he had, a lot of politics books, you know, and he's there with his chinos and his shirt and la da da. And I says, what do you do yourself? And he says he was a councillor and he also works for the local MP, or one of them. And I was like, all right, what do you make of this, you know, the smart cities, 15-minute cities, the digital IDs? He never said too much about it. He says, yeah, they seem the conspiracies focus on this one or that one, but they see it's working well over here. I think it was Bourneville he mentioned. And talk a lot. I says, I won't take up much of your time, I'll go on with the job, but it's good to maybe get a fresh aspect coming from someone that's involved behind the veil, working in Parliament and government. So a half an hour later, finishing my job, tried to talk to him a little bit more. He was in a meeting and that. Hear them talking everything from pensions to this and that, but I never really picked much up on it. But see, when it came to maybe try and talk to him a little bit more about it, he was very tight-lipped. He wasn't saying a word. And that just made me wonder, why? Why be quiet about it? So yeah, there's a lot of things coming down the lines. So I wiped my feet on his rainbow mat on the way out, and I took what I got from it. Not much at all. So the reason I'm saying that then, if we get this one with keto back up for a second, we know we're in the times then with after the middle of the 20th century. Now Satan, we know this is Antichrist work. This is where you're seeing an anti-church, you're seeing an anti-government, a world government in the making, and all that's happening in the church as well. And that's why I think the Holy Orders are getting ridiculed, oppressed and despised, because yeah, they've got a lot to answer for what they've done over those time periods as well. And she told us in the middle of the 20th century, didn't she? In the 1960s, she appeared in Garabandal, telling us many priests, bishops and cardinals were on the road to perdition. Heaven knew very well what was going on back then as well as they do now, and this is why it's all building up for these times. Sacrament of matrimony will be attacked and deeply profaned. Lucia Fatima again in her later years says the last decisive battle between the church and the anti-church, between Christ and the antichrist, will be over marriage and family. But not to worry, she's already crushed his head, and that's where he belongs, below her feet. Now, where are we finding more? As the last 20 years, obviously, marriage has been redefined and changed and all the rest of it. But even many people I know are that way inclined, being gay and stuff like that, they still cannot take to do with a lot what's getting further added on with the transgender stuff, and a lot of them don't even like the fact that the kids are getting like these story times and stuff done. So I went and googled a little bit just to see exactly what story time was, and I grabbed 3 photographs from Google Images, and this is what you're seeing: little children happening to them. Men. I mean, look at this guy in the top right here with his hairy arms and chest and the way he's dressed up, and the kids there. But you know what got to me? Look at the ones else. Look at the other ones. Look at this one in the left below the rainbow flag. That's a father with his little girl. And then the bottom right, you've got a lady there with her child. Now the reason that stood out for me, not only just with the shock of it, but remember I did a video a few weeks ago when it all came out in the news that Scotland was hailed as the first country in the world to bring in all this to their curriculum. In the public schools at least. Thank God it ain't in the Catholic ones, and let's hope it doesn't. But I was like, how dare the government, the audacity, the sheer brass nakedness, whatever you want to call it, how can they make decisions like this and take it away from the authority of the parents? You know, I mean, many Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, and atheists alike are all going to send their children to public schools. So how on earth are none of the... I mean, do you see them queuing up to allow this to happen? Saying, we want this for our children. We'll even take them in and sit down at story time with them, just like they're doing in those photos. Who's voted for that? But this is what happens when you start keeping voting for a socialist government. It's a hair and a breadth away from this communistic reality. And yeah, you're just seeing it all the time, more and more. But what got to me is the fact that parents were in those photos. My goodness, what's going on? What is going on? Never with me. Never in a million years. Never. Right, where are we now? Rant over. But it goes back to Quito, Ecuador, doesn't it? They will focus principally on the children in order to sustain this general corruption. This is your Freemason and Masonic sects. How easy is it for children getting one of these and crying their way to getting it? The customs, the morals, the way of speaking properly, acting in a nice behavioured manner, socially as well as to your parents. The customs and everything's all broken apart. My wife's a teacher, and she says the way some of the children, even the youngest of the children, are speaking to teachers and one another, and they don't seem to care. I mean, I always remember school being bits and balanced with bits and bobs of both, but as it seems to be, there's more of a manifestation of it. And again, I echo everything Father Ripperger's been teaching us at a real good academic level, as well as through his experience with exorcisms and what the devil's been said back to him. You can truly see that governments are just in a state of malice where you cannot get a politician to tell you a true answer anymore. And it's this constant way of focus to what they're going towards, as we saw in the video earlier with all this digital, artificial, intelligent, 15-minute city, global communistic world that they're making. So when these things are all coming, how do you know when it's going to get better, when it's going to get worse? This is where I'd pick up on things such as the 20th century with Marian apparitions. I've said repeatedly that we are now at the end of the list of St. Malachi's list of popes, coincidentally coming at the end of the 4 popes prophesied at Garabandal. After John the 23rd, there would be 4 more popes. Now, Conchita didn't count 1 because he would have a short reign, and this is what Glenn Hudson sorted out on the interview that I had with him over a week ago. It was just based on different quotes, but she wasn't counting 1, but there are 4 after John the 23rd. So you have Pope Paul VI, John Paul I, who wasn't counted due to his 33-day reign, John Paul II, Pope Benedict XVI. That's your 4 popes done. So we're in the new era with Francis, who coincidentally comes at the prophesied time of 2 popes of Anne Catherine Emmerich. It conveniently came in her prophecies where all the church were shut, April 12th, 1820. She says there was a division in the church, the fact that they were going off in 2 camps. This is what echoes again the fact that April 12, 2020, the churches are shut. We have 2 popes. You can see the division in the church between liberal and trad. You're seeing the fact that all the LGBT stuff's coming in, especially in America. What's going on in the churches there? But then the TLM, the traditional art mass, is getting done. You can see the camps coming. But I think there's something else about it, because she speaks about a compromise. And I think you're seeing all this World Economic Forum, you're seeing your Bill Gates Foundation, you're seeing everything all in with the Holy See. There's a lot happening with the church right now. And then what's the church doing when all these things are coming? It's attacking marriage and family and even the church identity, the magisterium and everything else. What they're doing? They're signing agreements in Abu Dhabi. You've got the mosque, you've got, what else we got there? Synagogue and the church. Abrahamic religions all together in the name of peace. Now, I remember going to different things, either through my own church or through the time of ceremony, where it was at ecumenical gatherings and that. And I always felt really joyful after them, is because the fact that we are sharing something that was there, it's something more. But there's another subject I ain't going into just now in terms of what these books speak about, this great revolution that's to come. Again, Garabandal spoke about it, like when communism returns will be a revolution. You know, and again, as the first question was asked, when's the Pope going to Moscow? Well, we know shortly after his return from Moscow, it all kicks off. And if I remember correctly, it's all Europe and that it's going to get worse with hostilities breaking out. But something also happens in the Vatican that speaks about the spirit of communism even in the Vatican. Because remember when Lucia says every nation will be under communistic rule? The Vatican state is its own sovereign state, so it's a nation itself. Remember that. So to get refocusing here, We were prophesied the time that we're in. We've had the four popes of Garabandal, coincidentally coming at the same time as the two popes prophesied by Anne Catherine Emmerich during the time of church closures, during the time of division. We're speaking also now of the end of the list of St. Malachy falling with Pope Francis, who was part of those two popes during that time of Anne Catherine Emmerich, and now into the new era after the four popes of Garabandal. We're also speaking the fact that this year is the 50th anniversary of Akita. You know, the devil will infiltrate and even into the highest ranks of the church, where you'll see cardinals against cardinals, bishops against bishops. You know, I would say we're even at the point we're quite desensitized to that division now, because again, you've been hearing it for 3-5 years, especially your Cardinal Burkes against this one, you've got Schneider against this one, you know, you had the Cardinal Pell and all that happened with him getting put in jail, and then the controversy surrounding a lot of chat in Rome with Benedict retiring and reasons behind it. I was in Rome when that happened. I was there with Francis out in the balcony. I remember the chat. Rome has its own way of chatting. But Akita, Japan is definitely the one to focus on right now for this year being the 50th anniversary. You know, that's one of the pictures of the statue where it wept, I believe it was 101 times. Now, what is it that's going to happen, and what is it Our Lady and God is preparing us for? Well, what I think is getting done is there's going to be a great tribulation, there's going to be a great shake-up in the church. Yes, we know the warning's coming, yes, we know the great miracle is coming, and this is going to bring more people back to God than ever before. And this is why I believe these videos, if we still have them available on the internet, after all hell breaks loose on earth, they'll stand as testimony to correct people. Because even they say after a short period that people start doubting, scientists will start saying, oh, it was something that happened in space concerning the warning and all this stuff. All the nonsense. It's been God all along. But one thing I haven't tapped on for a while, and I need to refresh my mind, is this quote from Padre Pio. Would you hear this regarding the tribulation? I mean, things are going to be so at its worst with war, what's going on in the church. Everything's going to be manic, hell on earth, and there's going to be a great tribulation against the Catholic Church especially. And look what Padre Pio speaks about here. The great wonder of God, the great miracle, must be paid for with much blood throughout Europe. Now, the miracle comes after the warning, within 12 months after the warning. Remember that. So in order to pay for the miracle, European martyrs, much blood in Europe. And again, this book speaks in not just about whatever revolution comes from communism that's highlighted with one of the ideas of Marxists. I gave it earlier. But it's also the point of there's a lot of prophecies surrounding the men of Baird. Now, I'm going to touch a little on it now, but I don't want to do a lot about it. But since coming down to the Midlands of England, it's been an absolute culture shock when you see so many mixed races, religions and everything else. And it's brilliant. Don't get me wrong, it's brilliant. In fact, most of the houses I'm into, whether they're Muslim or Hindu, Sikh, any Asian family are the most generous when it comes to offering you cups of tea and giving you food. You know, and I've had a good couple of chats with some of them with the difference of faith, and it's always been good. But the other thing is when you read these books, and when I'm watching a certain prepper speaking a lot about the migrants crisis and all this that's going on in the country right now, and I think someone told me that years ago even Pope John Paul spoke about how the migration and the Islamification of Europe was designed to destabilise Europe to bring in their new agenda. And as much as it's been a great experience for over a year with many, many people and families of all backgrounds and religions, etc., you're seeing a lot of areas here where it's completely segregated, and they ain't interested in mixing into that point. They have their identity, which is based on their faith and religion. Most of the women, especially the elder women, don't even speak English. From most of the houses I've been in, and I don't see that any of them being anything like fanatic or anything like that, what you would see in the TV with the terrorist attacks and stuff. But there's prophecies that I need to look into more of regarding this other revolution, because there's certain saints that spoke about England is still to go through its bloodiest revolution. And this is going way, way back to certain saints saying this, not new time ones that are seeking imprimaturs. We're talking about ones that have been stamped with approval for, and they're saints. And when you're, and again, I'm reading this book, picking this up, which wasn't the intention. And then I'm looking at another channel on YouTube. It's all speaking about your smart cities, your digital IDs, and all this stuff. And then speaking a lot about the migration crisis. And one thing he highlighted, and I don't know if it's probably his own take on it, maybe making something out of it. But he speaks about the fact that out of, I think it's what, 250,000 migrants or something that are over here in all the hotels and B&Bs and everywhere else, 80% of them apparently, according to the data that he's apparently found, about 80% of these migrants are all fighting age men. Now, why does he need to say that? That's the question I'd love to ask him. Why do you need to say they're fighting age men as if you try to cause hysteria, try to cause division, try to cause panic and like suspicion? But the reason that a lot of riots have been happening with these migrants apparently is because they are attacking local women. All these men held up in hostels and all the rest of it coming mainly from Middle East Islamic states, especially the states that the British bombs have decimated, and now they're coming into us for everything here. It's like, well, they ain't going to be too happy looking at parliament buildings and all your prime ministers and everything else that have forced them to flee in the first place due to their orders. But then the Christian side in me as well is like, well, Joseph and Mary had to flee, didn't they? They had to become migrants and asylum seekers in Egypt. So it's a point where you need to help them where you can. But yeah, it's not just all those. I mean, people are coming from apparently Albania. I just thought of Liam Neeson in the movie Taken. They were all Albanian mafiosos that took the women away. And then you're seeing what's happening here, and that's why they're all rioting. But then you've got the government, like Serco and others. You're looking at the fact that, again, I'm going off here with this one. I'm speaking to many normal people in their houses every day. I've spoken to a few mortgage advisors. I've spoken to quantity surveyors. I'm speaking to people that work in construction. Half the time I'm looking at their houses and saying, where did you get your extension? Who you get a number for me? Any advice? You know, I'm down here, don't know anyone. And you know that the guys in construction, one of them saying they're already people getting laid off sites because of all the stuff that's happening now with the crisis and the finance stuff. The mortgage advisor is basically saying hold off for now. And what she was finding as a mortgage advisor is the fact that, see the amount of landlords that are trying to sell their houses now because the rent price is just too high to cover bills and everything with the price increases. And again, it's getting up this April, but people can't afford the rent. It's too high. You're going over $1,000 for rent every month in Middle England, not to mention what's happening elsewhere. So she's telling me to hold off, thinking about remortgage, doing her house up after getting married for a few months. So I'm watching with that. Yeah, I'm happy to look into doing things with the house and start a new life here and all that. But there's so much mix-mush going on. It's like sometimes you're best just to wait it out and see. Just thank God we have a roof over our head in the meantime. But getting back to all that stuff with the digital currency that Britons want to push in with the G7s and all your World Economic Forum, your Tony Blairs, your digital IDs, you can see that parallel of the materialistic, communistic world agenda. And you can see the fact that the decaying of the church in these times. We're in the new era with Pope Francis. We've came to the end of the popes from St. Malachy and Garabandal and everything else. We're here. That's the big thing. And guess what? Coincidentally, I think it was not a matter of days after the last lockdown was lifted and everyone's back to normal. This is definitely it. Within a matter of days, Russia then goes into Ukraine as if it was just perfect timing. You know? Russia is always the key when it goes back to the prophecies with Fatima. And I was always on the fence for years about whether it was consecrated or not, Russia. Did the consecration happen? Was it accepted by heaven? And many say it was the one with John Paul II that was done. The more I look into good resourced people that have done a lot of digging, and they're very much aware of a lot and looked into it, researched all that stuff. And then again, you see where Russia is right now. Is that a consecrated country of to the Immaculate Heart? Now, there's another book that reminds me of that. It's just lying here. I wasn't planning to talk about it. Again, I think I picked it up in a video a couple of months ago. The author in this book states that Jesus appeared to Lucia Fatima because she had visions and mystical experiences, apparitions throughout her entire life, and conveniently passing away in February, a couple of months before John Paul II, in April 2005. Now, in that book, Jesus says to her, that the consecration wasn't done in time, but not to worry because it has been entrusted to his mother, and Our Lady has taken care of it. And that's why I believe in Medjugorje. I'll finish here what I began in Fatima. Massive statement, massive. What we're talking about? We're talking about the consecration of Russia. We're talking about whatever's left from that so-called third secret that's all to do with the church. And I believe it's the spirit of the Antichrist, it's the apostasy that's getting repeated from Garabandal and Nikita and other places as well. But sticking with those ones for now, you can see it. And I think it's going to be a point, whether it's wisdom of the church or whether it's politics, as I'm too familiar with after 4 years in Rome, something was there with the church that didn't want to do it, or something diplomatically it's not good to do. And I know how much they pussyfoot round about in Rome, let me tell you. Very timid era of men who are in the church. Very, very much wimps. And I don't mean to sound bad to them or that. I know there's many good priests out there, and I'm very close to many. But my goodness, it was hard. It was hard. It took me a long time to get over it. And the reason I'm saying that is because I just know, maybe let's not do it. I'm all over the place here with this part. But I just find that they're going to get themselves caught out if it's not done deliberately with wisdom and waiting for a certain time to then reveal that last part of the secret. They're going to get themselves caught out in a desperate situation where these things are still going to roll out and they're going to need to just face up to it. Because Russia ain't shown any signs of consecration. Russia's shown the fact that it's coming back as a scourge of nations that Our Lady says it would. That's what's happening now. And you're seeing cardinals against cardinals, you're seeing bishops against bishops. It's the infiltration of the church that, again, Father Ripperger, your Dr. Taylor Marshalls, have all been speaking about for a long time, going way, way back to the 40s with the communists, again, putting in the gay seminarians, the Soviets, and then it comes 20 years later to the Vatican II, and then everything that's changed from there over. I don't watch a lot of Taylor Marshall. I go in and out of his channels, especially over years ago. I didn't watch much of him, but some of the things I'll pick on if I see the topic and that I like, that helps me where I'm at with things. But yeah, whatever's going to happen, it's going to be bad, and that's why, again, I believe in an answer of Medjugorje is why she's appearing there for all this time. It's not the longest apparition in record. Laos was over 50 years and accepted by the church. There are others, but look at the time frame that we're in. Look at these prophecies again of St. Nihilus speaking about the times. Have you noticed where you can't see the difference between men and women recently? And then all the fact that customs coming in, it's the spirit of the Antichrist. It's all through the Masonic sects that Our Lady was saying. We're seeing absolutely everything going on to that point right now, is where we're seeing Marxist communism coming through. And then when it comes to, what have I got here? Yeah, we've got a Keto one up. I think there's a few overlays I was picking up on Instagram. I'll show you these. And then again, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I don't do a lot on Twitter. I'm trying to get back into it. But Instagram I seem to check up quite a bit these days. And here's a few of the overlays I thought I'd just show you based on what I'm speaking about. What do you think? I'm going to look at comments in just a minute. Thanks for staying with me, guys. It's been much appreciated. But yeah, I remember saying every movie that Hollywood's ever imagined in the future times is kind of made a reality now. You're kind of seeing this here. I don't know if I can zoom in on it. Let's see if I can unlock it. This is when things change on the scenes. There we go. So I like the idea, the fact, here's Demolition Man 2032. not too far away, where police don't know what to do without the robot. Those are not going along with the rules and living underground eating rat burgers. It's a good movie with Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone, Sandra Bullock, Demolition Man. And then, of course, there's Artificial Intelligence 2101. Don't think we need to be thinking that far ahead. The AI movie came out 20 odd years ago, and already Tesla's looking to get robots out the next 2 or 3 years. But yeah, whatever's going to happen between now and The Matrix in 2199, that's anyone's guess. Let's get rid of that one. Let's show you another here. Smart city. It's called a smart city because if they called it a concentration camp, you might not want to live there. Okay, it's a bit of an extreme case when you think back to it. I mean, look what happened with Gary Lineker last week when he even mentions that N-word of the Germans in the concentration camps and stuff like that. But it goes back to something I've highlighted before as well, and I keep these little snippets that just never seem to go away because to me it makes complete sense. Have you ever watched the movie Carol, with a K, Carol, the man who became Pope by John Paul II? There's a scene in it, he's running from the Nazis and the guy gets him into the house and hides him away. And basically the conversation with him goes, not to worry because we'll defeat them by love. He's like, how can you say we'll defeat them by love? They're outside with machine guns. He says, we'll defeat them by love because evil devours itself. And Carol catches on. If we don't defeat them by love, they'll come back with a new face, a new mask, a new name. It's the same evil. And the guy says, exactly. Yeah, it's a great example of what was there before is here in a new mask. It's the same evil, but it's trying it with new ways of the time, technologies and all the rest of it. You can see it for sure. And again, a few other people are speaking my language. Green is the new red. All this climate change, that is the main thing that's pushing everything I've spoke about. Look, that's the main thing that it's been spoken of what I've covered tonight. It's all back to the communism. It's the climate change stuff, pushing it for everything. Your carbon footprint, digital ID, tracker, all in the name of climate change. And of course, climate hysteria, Marxism. There was another one I couldn't get a hold of. It was basically quoting Al Gore. Remember when he lost the presidential race after the recount at Florida with George Bush's brother, who was the governor of Florida, getting his brother in? Al Gore got moved off. The happy, nice go guy probably had a bit more brain in Bush to deliver the tour all about the climate change stuff and all the data. And apparently the icebergs and all that were meant to have been melted by 2013. And someone else has put one up saying on Twitter that Greta Thunberg's took down an old tweet as well about the same situation, more or less happening last year. Still not happened. It goes back to that part there with Cardinal, I was going to say Cardinal Marx. It goes back to the false consciousness and ideological control, just herding us along. And the problem is we're getting herded along like sheep without the shepherds. Think of that for a second. Where are our shepherds with all this? I think I've got one left here. It didn't start with gas chambers. It started with one party controlling the media. Hello? One party controlling the message. One party deciding what is truth. One party censoring speech and silencing opposition. One party dividing citizens into us and them and calling on their supporters to harass them. It started when good people turned a blind eye and let it happen. And that's all it takes for evil to spread, is for good men, good people, shall I say, these days. It only takes good people to sit about and do nothing in order for evil to prevail. And we're too quiet, this quietism, this fear, this politically correct ideologies. For me, my memory going back to the time of Tony Blair, I remember back then in Edinburgh, one day they were just rushing into libraries and places to get rid of the Scottish flags because it was offensive. The crucifixes taken out of public areas, from hospitals to B&Bs, the Gideon's Bible all away because it's offensive. That was like 15, 20 years ago. But look at all, and this isn't just one party in one country. You don't have a party in one country anymore. It's world domination. I mean, if they can all go to Davos in January and then roll this 15-minute smart city nonsense out within 2 months, then this isn't them divided. They're working together, but those who oppose it, it's them and us. And we saw that in 2020 with the lockdowns. Those taking the mineral shot and those not. It came, obviously I'm watching my words here with the algorithm, but even that showed you through fear, even in the church especially, they had to go that point above even, which is low. But the division, the draconian, all the rest of it. So I spoke a good bit there. I know there's a lot covered, and like I say, we're going live, so I've not got my OCD in play. In fact, I've got a bit more cameras that's went on now for an hour and 15 minutes, because I could spend a day editing little tweaks here and there for the sake of a short video. So I might be a convert to live stream. What do you think? How's it going for you? Let's get back into some of these comments. I know there's a way I can get a comment on the screen, and I practiced it a couple of days ago, but I can't seem to find it, and I don't want to try it in case I lose you or something like that, so I'm just going to read them here. Yeah, Brian O'Neill, to think Tony Blair wanted to become a Catholic. I believe he did become a Catholic, and I even remember back then, it's like, what an absolute travesty, because you know he's never going to follow the faith, and apparently he was a top Mason anyway. You know, he vetoed the fact when Alex Salmond says we need to get rid of the law, what's it called again, where a Catholic can't be Prime Minister or Chancellor or still can't marry into the royals unless he gives up his religion and faith. And Tony Blair vetoed it. But then within a year or so later, he becomes Catholic. And then I remember reading in the paper within a week or two after that, him and his wife were speaking about why the church needs to change its teachings on contraception. I was like, well, there you go. There's the beginning of it, you know, straight away. Getting in there, the Masons getting in there and putting his influence in, just like many of them have done through the ranks of the church. Yeah, Mary, I'll check that prophecy book out from Gerald Culleton. Brian again, I believe we're in the time Sister Lucia spoke of in her 1957 interview. Yep, for sure, mate. I agree. Ryan, love your content. Thanks for investing time into this from a Kiwi living in London. Yay! Great stuff, Ryan. Thank you. Yeah, with Mary McGee, with one swipe of his hand, God could wipe us from the face of the earth. Maybe it's going to take that to rid himself of the lot of us. Well, he can do absolutely anything, and I think what's probably happening here has probably been echoed many times anyway elsewhere. He's allowing us to go with that free will. He respects the free will so much that he'll keep giving us every option to turn to him, every grace. And things are going to get so bad like never before. Even Akita again, this 50th anniversary, Our Lady says that when the justice of God comes, the punishment, his wrath, is going to be worse than the time of the flood, the deluge, because mankind is at the point where it's worse than it's ever been before. And that says a lot when you look at the biblical history. And Akita Japan does speak about how up to 2/3 of humanity would be wiped off the face of the earth. The living would envy the dead. And the only thing left would be the sign. And I wonder if that sign speaks about the Medjugorje miracle sign, the miraculous sign, which is also described at Garabandal as well. Because God, what he's going to do when everything's at its worst, he's going to step in as an act of mercy to save his remnant church that remains through this great tribulation, and before we basically obliterate the planet through these 1%ers causing all this havoc. You know, that's when he's going to step in. And that's where we're going to have the last chance of mercy before all hell breaks loose and continues. I was just going to say, do you know when you read that book there, From the Warning to 2038, it still speaks after the great warning, the illumination of conscience, the great miracle, the outpouring fresh of the Holy Spirit, and all the miraculous events, and not to mention the people like us that are going to be out there like the apostles giving it laldy. taking the faith to them, and all the conversions and the droves and droves of people going to confessionals. That's why the priests are the bridge to the triumph, as mentioned in Medjugorje. The vacations are astronomical in number, and these guys are ready, and that's what we want, that's what we need. The priests in the confessional, I believe, will be the bridge to the triumph. But even after all these great events, these biblical events all come to pass, there's still going to be that trial, there's still going to be the evil, there's still going to be a lot of things going on. It makes you wonder why on earth, how the mindset of some people, But earlier they did say not everyone would. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking of when you've left your comment there. They could do it all. And Father Ripperger says the demons know they know their time's up, not because of Pope Leo's mystical experience of 1884, where he gave us the prayer of St. Michael. He says shortly into the 20th century, he'll be unleashed more. Shortly into the 20th century, we have the apparitions of Fatima. And here we are all this time later with everything said in between. You can see his time's running out, not just for that time given to him, but as Father Ripperger even says in a recent video, when you look back to Sodom and Gomorrah, he goes into the Jewish, I forget the name of it, but the historical writing of the Jewish texts even go back to Sodom about the fact that it was contractual marriages between men. They were basically what we call today's gay marriage. So if the demons know their time's coming up because they see what's in play right now in the world, it's because they know what happened back then when they got to that same place. That's his words, and to me it just makes it makes obvious sense. Let's see where else we are. Mariana Bertold is an expert on Fatima. Brian, you just reminded me, I actually messaged Mariana Bertold a few weeks ago, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. She said she'd get back to me, maybe do something on YouTube. I remember seeing her on my Marian Apparitions Facebook group page, and that's again which I keep meaning to get up. I run a Facebook group it's on Facebook. It's called Marian Apparitions. I set that back up in 2014, and I've got about 18,000 people on it nearly. So if you haven't joined it yet, and you're on Facebook, join Marian Apparitions. I'm the admin on it. I've got Glenn Hudson help me now for the last few years. That's why it was great to finally get him in the interview with Garabin Dal. But I set that page up myself, Marian Apparitions. And I remember her posting a lot on it, but I don't see her anymore with it. She still get back to me actually. So I'll probably send her another message. So thanks for reminding me of that, Brian. Black Heart, the silence is deafening. So many good people just keeping quiet. Well, again, I think it comes to was it Last Select? Maybe Keto as well. You look into it more detail. Those who should speak will fall silent. And those who should speak are your shepherds. Some are not. Many are not. In fact, I was speaking to, I'll keep their anonymity, speaking to someone very close to me last week. Went to the local parish priest up in Scotland there. And I know the priest is a lovely man. He's a really, really nice guy. He's only been dating a few years, late vacation. And this man asked him, it was a Divine Mercy novena book. Can we leave them at the back of the chapel, Father? So he's looking through it and that. Oh, we can't. Let's get this prayer of Our Lady of Guadalupe about abortions and all that stuff. It's too hurtful for people. Can't do it. And I told the wife, my wife, I told my wife that, and she says, well, I think it was the lady that was arrested in Birmingham twice now. She's been arrested again after the first time the court let her go. My wife knows her personally, and I'm sure she quoted her. I think it was her she quoted. She says, well, normally, is it Sarah, as it says, well, how much more can they be hurt after doing it? And that's why it's too hurtful, we can't put it in. So how much more hurtful can they be? We need to help them get past the hurt. We need to help them heal, But he was just shocked at the fact that, again, this wimpish attitude from an newly ordained priest. And then the same priest, a couple of days prior, this man speaking to him, saying, you know, this living situation with a friend right now. We're both doing catechesis courses. We're in separate rooms. We're chaste. God is number one in both our lives. Just in case you hear any gossip and you're a bit conflicted if we're coming to communion, just to let you know, we're very conscious and we're going to communion worthily, and we're living that chaste life. God at the centre. Oh, don't worry, the priest says, I would never refuse communion to anyone. So, after 4 years being in seminary, it's all about compassion, compassion, compassion. And when I went to seminary, I was Fatima, Medjugorje, I was Charismatic Renewal, Altar Rails back here. I had a bit of everything because it was all love for God. But the difference with me and them is I wasn't just in fire, I was a bonfire, I was a blaze. And a bit of naivety going over there, automatic respect to priests and all the rest of it. But when you get through the veil, you're there with broken men, you're there with sinners, you're there with the normal. But they're just dry, they just seem burned out. And I knew when I asked one, how did you get the call? What's your vacation story? And the response was, well, that's rather personal. I'm like, you ain't got it. Because see me for the few years before it with many, many people that I met, where it was in pilgrimage, where it was in church circles, where it was in youth festival events. I'd done it all. And it was the fire, it was the zeal, it was the passion. And although we may be selfish in nature, the one thing we can't hold to ourselves is that fire to give it to others. It's just supernatural nature. Once you've got it, you can't help but go with it and give it out there. And that wasn't happening with any of them. And then, of course, everything with Cardinal O'Brien came about, which kind of highlighted a lot of what was happening in the seminary anyway. Turned me haywire with it all. And then when I hear this, stories like that, and a couple other stories of guys in seminary still giving communion to others that shouldn't be going, and no one seems to care. But again, that's one of the problems right now, is everyone's going to communion, no one's going to confession. And that's not to judge anyone else, I don't know their state of beings, but when you see one queue and not two queues, then it goes back to why Our Lady's getting everyone to confession, and Medjugorje is the confessional of the world, as John Paul II says. People don't have a great experience maybe in these places unless they clear themselves out with confession first. Go to God's mercy first. So yeah, this is what happens when you read comments, you go off on it. Ryan's asking, have you visited Medjugorje personally? Obviously, is there anything from your experience you'd be willing to share? Woof! You've just reminded me of a few photos I could a couple of photos, one in particular I could put up, but I maybe save that for another time then, that's notes to take away. I've been to Medjugorje 2005, 2004 was maybe the first time, and I've probably been about 5 or 6 times now. I went like 3 or 4 years in a row, maybe 5 years in a row from then, and then I joined seminary, done other things, and I think I went back in Medjugorje 2017, 2018, and I was shocked to realise it had been quite a number of years since going. I was so used to it. I've since been to Fatima once, which was always my first love. I've been to Garabandal a couple of years ago. Videos are on the channel. I claim that my Garabandal videos from 2020 are the most compiled, up-to-date video footage anywhere on YouTube. And I did search quite a bit to see what else I could find, and YouTube wasn't showing me anything better. I took over the drone. I've got 4K drone footage over the entire mountains in the village. I've got time lapses. I've got everything in Garabandal, so check it out. Been to Lourdes once, as well as Fatima, Garabandal, but Medjugorje I've been a few times. Personal experiences. I took a couple of photographs. One night the moon, I was coming back from the Risen Christ statue, where the leg weeps the oily substance, which is amazing to see in itself. And I've heard stories all about things with that in the cloths and stuff. On the way back, the moon this night was completely gold. It was a dark night and the moon was gold. So I'm there with my little DSLR camera taking a photo, and on the screen you can zoom in. And it did look like a picture of Padre Pio on the moon. And I was like, no, you can't look for signs over here in Medjugorje, because you hear this stuff all the time there. It's so unique. But when we zoomed in on it, the man I was with, a friend, he says, "No, that's Benedict, that's Saint Benedict." I says, "How's it Saint Benedict? That's awfully random." He says, "Well, it's his feast day today." And this was 2005, so I did read on Saint Benedict just because Pope Benedict was recently elected Pope. And I don't think I have it on the MacBook, but what a photo this was when you zoom in. You can see from the side the nose, the mouth, and the long beard. And he's like that. It's the best photo I've ever had to see anything about it. And this was from the Golden Moon that night. I've seen a couple other little things with the moon like that with others. But nothing like many other miraculous stories or signs. The thing for me with Medjugorje is the heart, and I know that sounds cliche, but I had a great experience up Apparition Hill, just sitting there one night with the Bible, and I think it was John chapter 15, on about being cut from God like the vine. You have to be part of it to get the sustenance. You have to be part of Him to grow. Otherwise, you're going to wither away. And at the time, I was withering away after seminary, having that turbulence, and how I got to Medjugorje that time was miraculous. And yeah, it hit home reading that and being there at Apparition Hill. But there's just something that jolts you back. They're just living the sacramental life that we should be having here and everywhere else where you are. It should all be there. But when you've got tens of thousands of people outside at adoration and you can hear a pin drop until someone's screaming and the priest take them away because they're having a demonic manifestation. Again, the devil gets attracted there, but because the love of the Eucharist, the true presence of God in the Eucharist, and you can hear the thousands of people in the silence loving Him, devil can't stand it. Can't stand it at all. So yeah, Medjugorje hits the heart for sure. But I'll try next time get ready if I want to do more in Medjugorje, because I do have a couple of videos coming up. I was saying at the beginning, I've done the interview with the producer Holly Carney and Anne Vucic, who done a lot of interpreting for the visionaries in Medjugorje. There's a new Medjugorje movie coming out that I'm working with them on, partly with YouTube. Between the Mountains it's called, and it's all in the fruits of Medjugorje. So I'm going to be doing more Medjugorje for sure. And tomorrow's March 18th. Remember that, folks. Tomorrow's March 18th. So this is the annual message given to Mariana. And Our Lady did say to her, and it's in her book, that she doesn't appear on March 18th because it's Mariana's birthday. She appears on March 18th as part of her mission. And she's never once says happy birthday to her. But she told us in the future, when the events of the secrets unfold, you'll understand why March 18th, you'll understand why the 25th of the month, why these days of fasting, etc. It'll all become clearer. So yeah, the way she gave that message in January at Medjugorje, humanity's on the road to perdition, that word perdition echoes Garabandal, doesn't it, when it was the clergy on the road to perdition. She was very blunt, and even that was something, because normally Mariana gets the harder messages, but that was to Maria in January, and that was an eyebrow raiser. That was out of character, so to say. And yeah, I'm not putting much emphasis on it. We'll see what happens tomorrow. But March 18th was when Putin was elected president a few years back. Remember that one? Russia's always key. I'll just leave that there. Where are we with questions? Yeah, the dysphoria, the confusion and that. It's always hard. You always need to love the people wherever they're at. But as John Paul II says, it's the truth with love. And no matter what, the truth can be given. It's not going back to that overlay I had earlier, where it's one voice, one government, one control, and those opposed are them. We're all the same, but it's about getting the truth. And it's the truth that's completely muddled up right now. Mary McGee, it makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I'm glad that helped. Like I say, I'm doing this off the cuff. Tony Roach is in the house. Hello. Tony, great guy. I did say I haven't checked out that MeWe, and that's one for the folks here in the UK. Call out. It's a new social platform. It was set up after all the totalitarian control of social media during the couple of years where we were all caged up, and we couldn't put facts up, although all the truth seems to be coming out more and more now. I think Mark Mallet from Countdown to the Kingdom and a few others, from what I've picked up, they created another platform, or the focus on the platform. It's called Me We, and it's one to check out. You can join for free. I'm on it now. Yeah, Tony, My Heart Will Triumph book. That is definitely one for everyone to read for Medjugorje. It's Mariana's own words, and it's a beautiful read. Really is. Yeah, Ryan, I'm happy to share that and anything else. I'm an open book, especially when it comes to giving it all to God and Our Lady. Happy St. Paddy's Day to you as well. If you haven't been, Ryan, don't be afraid to go. Do not be afraid to go. I've never flown into Split, but fly into Dubrovnik if you can, and arrange with the Irish Centre, St. Paddy's Day. That's what happened with me the last time. The first time I went with a parish mission group, or a pilgrimage group, sorry. Then the next 3 times I went with the community that I was in for the youth festivals. And then in 2017 I was there myself. I went over, I did it. It's so easy. Same as Garabandal. Everyone thinks that's hard as well. It's not. But Medjugorje, I just messaged the Irish Centre, because they will do the taxi run to pick you up, even if you're not staying there. They'll drop you off to. I stayed with Mario and Maria's. I normally would stay at their pension, and taxi picked me up, dropped me off, and that's you there. Go, just go. You won't regret it. But that Adriatic coastline, Dubrovnik, that's where the film Game of Thrones. It's absolutely stunning. Beautiful coastline, beautiful drive. But once you get there, all you're going to see is a parish mass. You're going to see confessionals in droves. You're going to go up the nice hills in the sunny days, have some quiet time, have some prayer time, and let God do the rest. Go for it. Yeah, I don't have the link there, Tony, but if you want to put the link in for MeWe, you can. It's literally mewe.com if you just want to check it out. But remember, folks, I mean, I could talk all night, but I think I've covered everything. So if there's any last questions you want to put up, we're at 1 hour and 36 minutes. I'll probably pull the plug at 1 hour and 40. So a few minutes more if you want to get things in, go for it. But it's been good. I'm glad I've done it. I've got into the rhythm of just speaking away and keeping things going. This little stream deck with all the buttons, I hardly ended up touching. I've been clicking them on the laptop here, because I've got all these little parts all over you can't see, and it's just this screen. But there's so many other things I don't even know if I got them all. I think I did get them all. I'm looking at the names of them. There's a couple I didn't put in. I don't think I've got them here. Yeah. Let me see. I'm just going to fire these things up now from based on what I've spoke about already. Concerning Fatima, about the apostasy in the church. And again, this was on my video I've done with Fatima and Garabandal, Deep Dive Connections, a couple of years ago. They're all there on the playlist. So I'm trying to see if I can see this. So there's overlays here. March 17th, 1990. Cardinal Silvio Audio spoke with Sister Lucia in 1985, said, "The Blessed Virgin was alerting us against the apostasy in the Church. I would not be surprised if the third secret alluded to dark times for the Church, grave confusions and troubling apostasies within Catholicism itself. If we consider the grave crisis we have lived through since the Council," so that's the 60s to 1985, or to 1990, he's saying, "If we consider the grave crisis we have lived through since the Council, the signs that this prophecy has been fulfilled do not seem to be lacking." And that was in 1990. Oh, and it was March 17th, there you go. Just clicked onto that, St. Paddy's Day. So he later said in 1990, a few months later in November 11th, "The third secret of Fatima contains a sad prophecy about the Church, and for this reason, Pope John XXIII did not divulge it. In 1960, the Pope would have convoked a council from which, contrary to his intentions, there would arise many difficulties in the Church." Yeah, your Father Rippergers, your Taylor Marshalls, and everyone else will tell you the 1960s after Vatican II is what's caused all the issues to now. And it has to a degree for sure, there's no doubt. I mean, look at the lack of faith, lack of vacations, and everything else. But sometimes part of me thinks it's a scapegoat as well. It's not actually the council. Because remember, your Karol Wojtyła, John Paul II, your Benedict, they were all part of that council as well. And look at the great they brought about. But it seems to be a scapegoat to a degree. But I think with the deadline of 1960, going back to the Fatima consecration of Russia, to be done by 1960, and it wasn't. 1 year later, she's appearing in Garabandal, telling many are on the road to perdition. Less and less reverence given to the Eucharist. And look what happened 2 years ago. The churches closed. You couldn't get the Eucharist when you did. People were grassing on you for taking it in the tongue, and the priest couldn't do it after the bishops laid it on them. That was just that. That was a little taste of what's to come, unfortunately. And that should be a highlighter to us all. Our eyes should be wide open to everything we've went through the last couple of years. Here's another one I've got up here. Our good Pope Benedict himself. November 11th, 84, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger affirmed that the third secret concerns a radical call for conversion. A radical call. Something you get in Medjugorje. The absolute importance of history, the dangers threatening the faith and the life of the Christian and therefore of the world. And then the importance of Novicini, the last events at the end of the time. But the things contained in the third secret correspond to what has been announced in Scripture and are confirmed by many other Marian apparitions. So announced in Scripture makes me think of when Lucia Fatima says everything's there in the writings, it's all there. If you want to know all about Fatima and the secrets, read the Book of the Apocalypse between chapters 8 through 12. St. Michael the Dragon, the Third of the Stars, that's what it is. That's what it's all about, the Antichrist and everything else. It's all about apostasy. Pachamamas and everything else that's going on. It's LGBT versus TLM. I mean, the division right now in the church has never been anything like it in my entire life. I don't know about you, what do you think? But with the weeds growing with the harvest, now it's not like this or here, it's like that. The harvester's coming, I'm telling you. I don't think I've got much left. Yeah, John Paul II gave this speech. Well, as Cardinal Karol Wojtyła, 1976 at the Eucharistic Congress in Philadelphia, we are now standing in the face of the greatest historical confrontation humanity has ever experienced. I do not think that the wide circle of the American society or the whole wide circle of the Christian community realize this fully. We are now facing the final confrontation between the church and the anti-church, between the gospel and the anti-gospel, between Christ and the antichrist. The confrontation lies within the plans of divine providence. It is therefore in God's plan, and it must be a trial which the church must take up and face courageously. I know there's another quote on the side there. I'm going to leave that for now, and I'll come back to it in a second. But again, he's speaking to the Antichrist back in the 70s. There was stuff going about there after Benedict's death that people are speaking about how he even believed in these times of could be the Antichrist and what we're ready to go through. Because like John Paul II as Pope, and again before he was Pope, but with being Pope Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, they both read everything to do with the Fatima writings that Lucia sent to the Vatican. Your Cardinal Ratzinger also commissioned into Akita Japan Prophecies, this being the 50th anniversary. And many believed that he deliberately stepped back, not with age and all the other nonsense. Apparently it's hushed up in the Vatican and what's going on inside of it. But in a way, by stepping back and letting Francis come forward, with him stepping back, knowing of because he gave the clean slate in Garabandal as well in 1992, when the Santander bishop of the time says, look at this mess with my predecessors. What's the Vatican saying about? What's the Holy See saying? What can we do with all this? And Cardinal Ratzinger, with clear slate, this is rubbish, basically. So that's why Garabandal is neither being condemned nor is it being accepted. But your good Ratzinger gave it a clear slate, and I believe it was 1992. And if you watch that documentary movie, Unstoppable Waterfall, absolutely brilliant. It's on YouTube. Watch it completely. It's amazing. All about Garabandal, setting the record straight. And of course, Glenn Hudson picks it up in the interview I had with him. But this one man, Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, knew all of Fatima's secret, knew all of Garabandal, commissioned all of it back in the 70s with Akita. And he says it goes back to Fatima. Akita and Fatima are linked. And he's aware of Medjugorje. He was the one that pushed through for the commission, which Francis now has the report of. And Anne Vucic, in the video I've got coming up this weekend, hopefully, she sets it clear that the commission has recommended the first 7 apparitions or messages as worthy of belief. But that recommendation still hasn't been accepted by the church yet. But that your commission's given it the thumbs up for the first 7 as well. I just see the parallel. I see the jigsaw pieces. You start in the corners. That's your main Marian apparitions. Then you get the imprimaturs round the side. Then you start putting other parts and pieces in here with the saints, mystics, and everything else that Our Lady's been doing, and you'll start seeing a clearer picture. You know, that's where I see. But there in '76, even Cardinal Wojtyła, before he was shot in the Fatima anniversary in '81, he was quoting more or less what Lucia says: the church against the anti-church, Christ against the anti-Christ, the marriage and family is the last decisive battle. We're living in it, folks. It wasn't there in the swinging 60s, although it all erupted, like she says in Quito. It wasn't there in the 90s. I grew up never born with any of this, like 2005, 2010s. Started getting sense of it all and that. But the last, since 2020, since this decade began, it's really intensified. We're hearing more Bilderberg groups. We're certainly no shy in hearing a lot to do with World Economic Forum, and to see the swift implementations this year from January's Davos summit with the World Economic Forum. Things are building up very fast with all this climate change behind it and all the other nonsense. By 2030 is the Great Reset. And I would say by 2029, that'll be 100 years since Our Lady went back to Lucia and says to her 1929, now God's ready for the consecration to be begun. So either 1929 to 2029, again, it's all focusing in this decade. I don't know if the secrets or events are going to be revealed, but one thing's for sure, we're going to get told in advance when it comes to them with Medjugorje. And then Garabandal, Conchita gives us 8 days notice of the warning. But I think that the warning, the illumination of conscience, is probably in the first Medjugorje secret, because Mariana says the world needs a shaking up. What better way to do that when you hear what the warning contains? So yeah, rant over. That's me done another 10 minutes. So there's a few comments and I'm probably going to leave it there. But I've absolutely enjoyed the company of you all. It's absolutely brilliant. Yeah, Deacon David. Yeah, amen. Come Lord Jesus. Brian, I'm not aware of the name of that prophecy then, Father Holzer. Oh, the name rings a bell, actually, but I can't think of it right now. I'll check it out. Thanks, Robert. Robert Brennan, another enjoyable experience. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you as well. God bless. Oh, yeah, Tony. Again, so Akita message after the Pachamama event. Sister Sasagawa said the angel spoke to her again, and she thought the time was very near. Well, Sister Sasagawa's lived a very quiet life since the 1970s over in Akita, Japan, or wherever she may be now in her congregation. And from a few videos I've seen, she's actually suffered terribly through her community life and been ridiculed and all the rest of it. Comes with the trade, I suppose, when you look at the Diary of St. Faustina and others endured it as well. But that's where you give it all to God to empty oneself, isn't it? But yeah. So Akita tells us cardinals against cardinals, the divine wrath wiping out two-thirds of humanity, the devil infiltrating to the highest ranks, all the rest of it. This now is the 50th year. And I think the timing of Pope Benedict's passing on New Year's Eve. The last Pope of Garabandal, the 4 popes, that's it done. The time of the 2 prophesied popes, I've said this already. There's so many, like 4 or 5 at least, things converging with the papacy in these times at the same time, conveniently, coincidentally even. There's a God incidence, as I call it. And he also died, as Glenn pointed out, it was at Pope St. Sylvester, who brought in an era of the church back then. Now he dies in his feast day, and now the new era begins. So yeah, and now with the clock striking midnight into January 1st, after the day after he dies, is the beginning of the Akita 50 years. So the Pachamama happened a few years ago, didn't it? And for the first time since the 70s that I know of, Sister Sasagawa of Akita says she's had another vision where her guardian angel appeared to her, telling her to put on, was it sackcloth and all that? I think it's echoing the book of Job for repentance and stuff. It's in the Bible. And then a week later, in October, it might have actually been the week that had October 13th in it, which was the Fatima miracle. Correct me there if that, I'm just thinking off the top of my head. But for the first time to speak in all these decades with such a sincere warning of Akita containing to the church and society and the world, she gets this first apparition in decades from her guardian angel telling her to repent for the church. Then a few days later to a week later, we have Pachamama. False idol worship in the Vatican and the churches elsewhere with the false idols in the sanctuary, on the altars. And I see a video that today, actually, a few channels have picked up that the Pachamamas reappeared with this synodality in Brazil. Yeah, synod, that's the thing with Garabandal. It's not just with the Pope going to Moscow. That seems to be at the end of the 3, because we're talking about the warning comes, it coincides with the Great Synod and when communism returns. I've been talking about that all night. So who knows where we are with this. That's when I'll be praying like never before, when the Pope's off to Moscow, for sure. But yeah, Akita's, I'm going to look more in with Akita for these days, because this anniversary is very significant with Akita, and you can see it's clear as day in the church and society for sure. Yeah, thanks Blackheart, you've done really well and very informative. I know there's a lot there, and you know what, I'm just going for it now. I'm enjoying the company with you all. It's a good chat, as if we're just there at the bar having a drink or something, or around the campfire, as I would like. The OCD seems to be a way of wanting it to be perfect and just talking away. So we'll see what comes of it. Play the drums. Go out, Gibbo, play the drums, please. You look like a good drummer. Well, I would need to set it all up electronically. The chair's over at the piano just now because the missus was playing that the other night. But it's a really good kit. It is a good kit. And you know, that's the first thing I ever wanted to do when I was in Rome and I knew I was leaving. I was watching a few channels. It was drum channels. I've got the computer. I've got the digital stuff. I just need a MIDI player, and I could even have a drum channel. That was always the dream to begin with. But that's all you're getting for now. But yeah, maybe still set up the channel. You never know. Michael Pant, well done, Mark. Great stuff. All the events long prophesied are coming out together very rapidly now. Keep it up. Please God, I do keep it up. And yes, I completely agree with you, Michael. There is an increase in that rapid way for sure. I can sense it. And not other average people I'm speaking to every day is part of my job. You know, whether they're white, black, Catholic, atheist, Muslim, Asian, whatever they are, whatever walks of life, the conversation seems to be quite repetitive that I'm having with them all. Is they can just sense, because half the time they've got the news on or something's on, and they're just sensing, like, even everything in movies, everything, and it's just getting more diabolical. And the sense if something's got to give in the strains in society, they can just sense it with all these like strikes and everything. There's just something with these 15-minute cities. There's a control grab coming over us for sure. And even people are unaware of any of these prophecies, are unaware of the times, they're still sensing something. So I look at that maybe quite providentially as why I might be there to enlighten them a little without giving them too much like tonight. There's supposed to be a permanent sign at Britannia as well. Britannia. Oh, that's Blackheart. You seem to be well knowledged yourself. Britannia. Oh, I forget her name. Is it Maria Esperanza? I'm thinking of with that one. I'm aware of her. I think that's Britannia. I'm not too sure. I can't say yes or no to that about the permanent sign. I'm unaware of it, but I think that's who the person is from that area. Yeah, Tony, cover in ashes. Please pray the penitential rosary every day. Sister Sasagava, become like a child every day. Yep. Good bit of advice there from Tony in the chat, everyone. Check him out. Graham, thanks so much. Prayers from Ireland. Thank you. Yes, keep praying for me. I'll pray for you all. God bless you, dude. God bless you too. Go out, Gibbo. We're near the end here. Brian and Neil. Sister Sasagawa asked us to pray the Rosary of Reparation. Yep, I think that's what Tony was saying earlier there. Tony Rocha. Maria Esperanza. Is that for Britannia? Is that what I was picking up there? Yeah, I'm not aware of the permanent sign either. Someone said Robert Nugent I've done a few videos with as well, Determined to be Catholic channel. He's a good guy. He's coming over here in a few weeks' time and we're heading off on a day pilgrimage. But he sent me a video of some priest in London speaking about how Medjugorje and Garabandal can't both be right. And one of the things is because the miraculous sign is appearing at both. I'm like, well, that's exactly why they're probably going to be both credible, because I think the plan of the century can't just be small. Our Lady says in Garabandal, when this miracle occurs, it's going to be the greatest thing God's ever done for humanity after Jesus. And I think I saw a map once of the Atlas of the world. You could draw a straight line, some degrees or whatever, between Garabandal and Medjugorje or something, or Akita. They all kind of work in some way. Someone's worked that out. Don't put too much into that stuff, although it's always something extra there. But I just see the parallels. I think everything that's came from Fatima, Garabandal, Akita, is going to be concluded in Medjugorje for sure. I've no doubt about it. I mean, the vocations to the priesthood are such an abundance of fruit, it cannot be denied. And it's the priests that are the bridge to the triumph. The triumph's in here. I ain't Jesus come in the clouds of glory just yet, I don't believe. I think there's something there with what the visionary mystic Marino Restrepo spoke about years ago. It'll be a Eucharistic reign after all this. It'll be a Eucharistic reign. And everyone's fallen into the church. The Jews will come into the church. Overnight conversion of Israel. Everything is going to be absolutely amazing. And it's probably a good note to leave on a high. I met Marino. I don't know if you're aware of Marino Restrepo. He's also got a YouTube channel, Pilgrims of Love. He wrote a book years ago after his own illumination of conscience when he got kidnapped in the jungles, in the jungle of Colombia and all that. From Darkness to Light is the book. I think I have it over here. Most humble man I've ever met, and had a good few conversations with him as well. And I remember one time having a cup of tea after he gave one of the talks down in Wales at Pentasif Friary. And so everyone's Fatima or Medjugorje and this and that. No one talks about Knock. No one talks about Knock, he said. He says everyone thinks Knock's just a nice place to go because she appeared there years and years and years ago. He says Knock is for the future. So what could that mean? And I think just being Scotland and you think of Britain or Ireland, you don't think too much. You need to go further abroad for these Lourdes and Medjugorjes and Fatimas. But a lot of people says to me a few years ago, you need to look into Knock. The stuff you're speaking about, you have to look into Knock. So I took them up on it. That's what's good about a YouTube community. I got them up on it and I looked at it. And sure enough, especially during the times when we were all locked up, the apparition was outside the church. No one could get in. It was Eucharistic with the Lamb and the altar. It was apocalyptic with the Lamb and the altar. And then you've got St. Joseph, Mary and John the Evangelist writing the book of Apocalypse. And again, Lucia Fatima tells us to look at chapters 8 to 12 if you want to know everything of Fatima. You can see it all. You can see it all. But let me know what you want coming up for next things to talk about, because this would be a quicker way of displaying it rather than all the video editing. I think I'm going to be a convert to live stream, because the video will always be there on the channel afterwards. So what apparitions, what links to them and anything else? Other one I've just come across now is Xavier Ariel, I think his name is. He's done a few interviews recently. French guy, I think he's brilliant, and he reminded me from his book that he's talking about, and I won't say it like a Frenchman, I'll say it like a Scotsman, Marie-Julie Jahenny. Marie-Julie Jahenny. Marie-Julie Jahenny from Brittany. Great mystic, great holy woman. And she covers a lot with the French monarchy and all that. Again, it get picked up in that book, From the Warning to 2038. Lots of other stuff there, again echoing what I've covered tonight with the major apparitions. So again, I read her years ago, I forgot all about her. So there's a few others there, and again, that jigsaw, they've all got their part in making up the clear image. So what else do you want me to talk about? What else do you want on the channel? Leave your comments below. Give us the thumbs up, help me get out here, share the video far and wide. I love how these little ladies that I know in Scotland have got their big prayer chain groups and WhatsApps and Messenger, and they just send to all. Just takes a few seconds to help me out there, folks. And it gets me back in the algorithm way, and it also helps get the most important thing is to get the messages out there. I ain't running a business or nothing like that. This is just me doing my little part, something I enjoy, something I feel convicted with. So get it out there far and wide as far as you can. And I feel focused now like never before, and I'm going to, please God, keep it going this time, because I've looked at the analytics after a year of doing nothing. I'm looking at the analytics of a lifetime, which has been about 8 years. I'm looking at them from 1 year. I'm looking at them in the last 3 months, and all the data, which thanks to my jobs helped me understand better. You can see the truth in the story with data. It's all you folks. It's no more of the camping that I'd done years ago with outdoor stuff, the bushcraft survival, which is part of prepping in a way. But none of that stuff's getting watched. It's all marrying apparitions and prophecies, signs of the times. That is what it's there for. And so that's why I no longer need to be thinking of everyone. I'm just focused on what it is. But I still think there's part of me thinking with those preppers and the prepping channels, they don't touch on religion. They'll see this and be like, what's going on? And that's why I want to see what's been told and forewarned about and what we're seeing getting implemented in the world, because that is the hand fitting in the glove. It's the duality, it's the parallel of both. It can't be one or the other, because when all hell breaks loose and these guys have got all their food storage and all the rest of it, if they still survive, they're still not going to make sense of the Great Warning. They're still not going to make sense of this, and then they want to hold on to everything themselves. Where's the Christian charity? What's going to be of society by then? You know what I mean? Rebuilding. The Great Reset of 2030 ain't going to be mankind's reset for the worst. It's going to be God's reset for the better. Amen. Let's see. Yeah, there's a lot of good points here, Tony, that you've got up. Did you hear about the spiritual revival aspect? Yeah, I've heard about it. Don't know enough about it though, Blackheart. Yeah, Eucharistic Rain, Brian, with Knock for sure. I'm going to leave it there, folks. We have stretched it just over 2 hours. I can't believe it. It's just after 10:30 at night here in the good UK. And I bid you good night. But as always, please like, thumbs up, subscribe, share, get the word out there. And thanks for everything. It's always great. You're my company tonight. I'm here myself, and I've enjoyed your company. I hope you've enjoyed mine. And it's hard to believe I've got so many people here just chatting away. It's great. Until next time, God bless. Bye-bye.